Now that we have created our form in the previous video, let's learn about CSS basics so we can style our form like so. I know it doesn't look pretty awesome, but the main purpose of this video is to learn the basics so that we can later create an awesome website through this course. If you haven't created the form yet, you can either go to the previous video or pause the video and try creating it by yourself, but don't worry about the styling for now. Now, we are ready to start styling the form. To start coding CSS, we must create a style tag, and it should be at the top of the file before HTML elements. In order to start styling our form, we have four options. The first one is to write the type of the element, which in this case, is form. And then open a curly bracket. Inside the curly brackets we will place all styling properties for this element. Let's style the form by writing width equal 50 VW. VW stands for view width, which is a percentage of the whole window. So in this case, we are telling the computer that the form must be 50% of the window width. Let's create a padding and a margin for the form. The difference between padding and margin is that the padding calculates the space inside the element, while the margin calculates the space outside the element. You will notice the difference in a moment. Let's give the form a padding of 2 VW, and margin top of 5 VW. In order to see the difference easily, let's create a border by typing border equal 1px solid black. Px stands for pixels, and solid is the type of the border. The third argument is the color of the border, which is black in this case. Now let's save the code and test the file on Chrome. As you can see, we created a margin at the top which is outside the border, and we have created a padding which is inside the element itself. This was the first option of styling an element, but this technique has a problem because if you have more than one form inside the HTML file, they will all look exactly the same, which might not be what you want. So we can fix this by giving an ID to the element. The ID is a unique identifier that can only be used for one element, and any element cannot have more than one ID. We can create an ID for the form element by leaving a space after form and type ID equal, and you can type any ID of your choice. I will name it my form. The ID should begin with a lowercase letter. If the ID contains more than one word, you can let each word start with an uppercase letter except for the first word, like so. In order to target the ID, we must go the CSS styling and change the word form and replace it with hashtag and then type the ID. Now if we save the file and preview it on Google Chrome, we can see that it works perfectly the same. The third option of styling is through using classes. Replace the word ID by class. And to target the class we must replace the hashtag with a dot. Classes can be used on multiple elements at the same time, and each element can hold multiple classes. If you want to have multiple classes on the same element, separate the class names by a space. This is the most recommended way of styling elements. The last way of styling CSS, which is not recommended, is called inline CSS. To do so we can start by leaving a space after form and type style equal, then we can type something like background color equal red. These are the four main types of styling CSS. Now let's continue by styling the elements inside the form. We want this sentence to be centered, so let's give it a class, and we can name it something like text-center. Now let's go to the CSS and target the class by typing .text-center, then open the curly brackets. Type text align equal center. Save the code and preview it on Chrome. Now let's create a class and name it containers. We will apply this class to all divs that contain the input elements. Now let's set the properties for this class by adding margin top in order to leave a vertical space between each container. Let's also create a top border to separate them from each other. Create a top padding to leave a vertical space from inside the container. Now let's design the button. Since we only have one button, we can give it an ID and name it My Button. Set the background color to black. In order to change the text color, set the color to white. Now set the padding to 1 view width in order to create a space from inside the button through all sides. Set the padding left and padding right to 2 view width, in order to make it look wide. In order to create a rounded corner, set a border radius to any value you want. It should be in pixels. I will set it to 25 pixels. Now wrap the button inside a div and set the ID for this div. I will set the ID to button holder. In order to center the div, we must set the width of the div. Set the width to fit content so it will automatically determine the width of inner element. Next, set the margin to auto. Perfect, the button is now centered horizontally. Place a top margin by typing margin top equal 2 view width. Now let's center our form by setting margin equal auto. Lastly, let's change the background color of the body. To target the body inside CSS, type body and open a curly bracket. Set the background color to any color you want. Now set the background color of the form to white. Perfect. We have now styled a form and you have learned some of the important basics of CSS.